Okay, a bit of a different one today. I want to talk about what it was like growing up as a British born Asian. As you can tell, I am Asian, but I was born here and I was raised here, and as a result, I sound pretty English. And that still sometimes surprises people when I speak to them on the phone and they meet me in real life and they're like, oh, I didn't expect you to. It's implied that they didn't expect me to be Asian. I want to talk about what it was like for me growing up, because how things are now were not how they were back when I was growing up a good 15, 20 years ago. So my mother is from China and my father is from Malaysia, but he was born here. So half Malaysian, half Chinese, but I am full Asian. Growing up, I never really noticed that I was any different from the other kids. I didn't notice, at least. I knew that we used chopsticks at home and we ate good Chinese food like rice, fish, vegetables. We ate a lot of seafood. So I remember being young and seeing my parents or seeing my mum prepare a crab, which like gets steamed and then you eat the claws. It's delicious. I still like eating crab today. But when I was really young and growing up, I didn't notice that I wasn't white until at school the kids would make fun of my eyes or make fun of my surname, or ask something stupid about China, or say, oh, Chinese, Ching Chong Chinaman, whatever. But this didn't happen to be the case when I was really young, like kind of from the age of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Kids aren't super aware of kind of where you're from and whether you're different. But I knew that I was different. I knew that I didn't fit in after this point. But it wasn't until I got to secondary school that I realized that life was really different because I wasn't a white man. And this isn't a video to sit here and complain about the fact that I'm not white or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm finally at a place where I'm happy with who I am and I'm not a self-hating Asian. But in secondary school, I just remember things being more difficult. I remember more of the Ching Chong Chinaman comments, more people making fun of my eyes, saying that I couldn't see properly, and I am actually short-sighted, so I do have issues, but I need glasses to drive. But that's besides the point. They would say, why do you look so tired? Why are you squinting? Stop sleeping. And obviously it was an all-boys school and there's a lot of testosterone flying around and it's a tough environment to grow up in. And there's an element of maybe it was a bit of banter, but also at the same time it was probably slightly offensive. And I distinctly remember one time there was an assembly where we were watching Catherine Tate and one of her sketches, and it was put up on the big screen. This person in the sketch was saying, oh, we need an interpreter. And Catherine Tate was like, oh, I can translate. And so when she went to translate, she was pretty offensive to the Italian guy. She was like, oh, quantissimo, mamma mia. Then she said to the Nigerian guy, this is not my sandwich. Slightly offensive, don't quote me here. It was pretty offensive. And then she got to the Chinese man. She would go, wow, 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 wow. I'm laughing because that was my way of like coping back at the time, but it was pretty offensive. But here's where it got kind of a bit old. Pretty much everyone in my year would then go up to me and say that. They would say the wayong, 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 and every time I would speak, they would just say the wayong, wayong, wayong. It did get old. It got so old so quickly. And I think one of the biggest reasons for this kind of, I don't want to call it discrimination, but this pretty much was discrimination. It was because I was one of 3 oriental boys in the year. And even in primary school, I was the only oriental boy in my year and one of the few in the entire school. So I've always been a minority. And I think that can be hard growing up, like kind of not only like looking different from other people, but also feeling like you don't fit in. Like, and as I talked about, I finally am at a place where I'm like, okay, I was never meant to fit in. I was always meant to be extraordinary. I was always meant to stand out, and I've just gone with it now. But back then, I didn't know that. Back then, I just wanted to be another white guy. I wanted to be a white man. I wanted to be like my friends who are white. Most of my friends were white, and I just wanted to be one of them. I didn't want to be Asian because of things like this, because of the way that I was treated at school. And for those of you who don't know, I was passionate about drama and acting, and I was in an agency for a while, and I was nearly in Waterloo Road. But back in school, when I had auditioned for the school plays, and we all know that if you're in an all-boys school, the only reason that you audition for the school plays and musicals is so that you get to work with the girls from the local schools, right? But I remember auditioning for these parts, like the more main roles, and I believe that I had some talent. I could sing, I could act, I could kind of dance, not that well, but dancing was never my strong suit. And I would always be told that, Matt, you are good, you can act, you're great, you can act, you can sing, but you just don't look right for the role. And then the person who actually got the role, surprise, surprise, was some white guy. So maybe I wasn't talented enough for the role. Maybe I wasn't as good as a white guy, but I'd rather be told that I wasn't talented enough, like he was more talented, as opposed to the fact that I didn't look right for the role. I remember doing a musical West Side Story at my school. It was a good 15 years ago now, a long time ago, and we had the Jets and the Sharks, and the Jets were meant to be like white Americans, and the Sharks were meant to be the ethnics, right? I remember walking into the audition and them pretty much saying, the casting directors, the school teachers, if you were white, they would say that if you were white, Jets. If you were coloured, Sharks. No exceptions. Another example of kind of this prejudice, I'm pretty sure my school was institutionally racist because every head boy that had ever been at my school was white, except for 1 year when there was this, I think he was from Pakistan, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Pakistan, this Muslim boy, tall, good looking, captain of the rowing team, perfect grades all throughout school, got into Oxford to study law, literally just the model student. He nearly wasn't head boy. There was uproar. They had no choice but to make him head boy because it would have been blatant racism if they didn't. It would have been blatant discrimination. But they didn't want to make him head boy because the quintessential image of this grammar school boy, and I went to a grammar school for you guys who didn't know, this quintessential image of the grammar school boy was not some brown kid. It was not. It was a white boy with all the same characteristics that he had, captain of the rowing team or rugby team, tall, good looking, going to Oxford or Cambridge, studying law, but he would have been white. Does that kind of make sense? So in the end, they had no choice, and I'm so happy that he got made head boy, because even during my time at school, when I got into the acting and the agency that I got into, I definitely noticed I was getting stereotyped for roles. It would be Chinese boy in advert, Chinese good student in school, Chinese takeaway kid working in takeaway. So it was pretty stereotyped. It would never be like the kind of cool roles, the leading man roles. And as I went to uni, I definitely didn't notice as much discrimination. It was far less. Like, I went to uni in London. I did uni twice. I did an undergrad in London and then a kind of postgrad in physiotherapy in Southampton. And both cities are very multicultural, very cosmopolitan. So I hardly ever felt that I was a different colour. Like, I was never made to feel that way, which was honestly just so great. Like, I actually loved my time there, and I think a lot of that was times were changing as well. So the point at which I was at uni, which was only a couple years ago, just society has changed so much, and you can see now with the new Avatar: The Last Airbender series, they've really not whitewashed people like they did with Ghost in a Shell with Scarlett Johansson. They also did that in the Death Note film adaptation. They really whitewashed the role, which I have a huge problem with. But finally, they are giving Asian men leading roles. Look at Simu Liu in Legend of Ten Rings, Shang-Chi, like, amazing. Look at him in Barbie as Ken, he was fantastic. And just a side note to say that it was pretty clear that white Barbie was interested in Asian Ken, which rooting for those interracial couples. It's great. You can see times are changing. You can see these leading man roles, crazy rich Asians, and Henry Golding in Last Christmas. He was fantastic. So I'm hopeful for the future. I'm really hopeful. I can see that there is now a change in the media, in the acting world, in television, in movies, in modeling. And that's what I want to do with like my modeling career. Like I want to make Asian men sexy. I want to be like the face of Asian men attractiveness. That's kind of where I want to take my career in modeling and acting if I get back into it. And that's where I want to kind of build my brand, because I am going to build a brand. And the reason why I want to build a brand is because I have seen how it can be hard for Asian men on the online dating apps, because we are still somewhat stereotyped as unattractive. Even with the rise of K-pop, there is still like stigma that Asian men are less masculine, that we are less attractive, that we are less classy, that we aren't as tall, that we aren't as muscular, whatever. And it just, this has to change. And I've seen how much things have changed already in the last 10 years in so many different aspects of life. And I think there's more change to happen, and I'm looking forward to seeing that happen. But that has been my experience growing up as a British Asian in the UK. And it's not been the easiest ride. It would have definitely been easier if I was a white boy, but nevertheless, I'm grateful for that experience, because I feel like hardships forge us. They make us into the people that we are meant to be. And I'm finally at a place where I'm not self-hating. I don't hate being an Asian boy anymore. I'm happy with who I am, and who I am is who I am. So I hope that you found this video useful. If you are also a British-born Asian, maybe you found some of these points relatable, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.